Hello, I'm State Representative Jamie Santora of the 163rd District in Delaware County. The budget address recently presented by the governor shows a shift in mindset. He has presented a budget with no large-scale, broad-based tax increases and is proposing a number of cost-cutting measures, priorities that have been championed by the House Republicans for several years. Of course, there are still many details to be presented, but the starting point is encouraging. Joining me today is someone that is at the forefront of the process, Majority Appropriations Chairman, Representative Stan Saylor. Welcome, Representative Saylor. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your background and how you became a representative yourself.
Well, I was very active in my community back home in a lot of charity events and JCs and Lions clubs, but I also was a small businessman. I owned a small construction company, had about 10 employees, and so I got very frustrated. Not as much, I got frustrated as a businessman, but I also got frustrated as somebody who's always trying to help those in need, whether it's children or senior citizens. And I thought it was time for a businessman to come to Harrisburg and try and fix some of the problems that we see in our communities every day. So that spurred me on to get involved, to come to Harrisburg. And I've been fighting ever since to try and make our communities better.
Excellent. You're in a new role now. You're the Appropriations Chairman. This is your first term in that position. Can you give us a little insight into that role?
Sure. As Appropriations Chairman, there's 4 Appropriations Chairmen in the House. One in the House Republicans, which I am. The House Democrats have an Appropriations Chairman, as well as the Senate Democrats and Republicans. Our job and role is to go through the budget process, have hearings, which we will be doing in about a week and a half from now. We'll be starting budget hearings and asking each of the secretaries and bureau directors to come in and testify before us. Members of the House who are on the Appropriations Committee, such as yourself, will get an opportunity to delve into the budget deeply, asking tough questions of the secretaries, asking them how they're managing programs, what's working, what's not working. The governor's proposed a number of changes, and our members of our Appropriations Committees will be able to delve into those and how they affect their local citizens. So those are our roles, and then it'll be my job as the Majority Chair of the House Appropriations Committee then to craft the budget with members like yourself to present and send off to the Senate at some point in time after our hearings are done. But it is a role that is very important because, as I see, your role as a member of my committee is an opportunity for us to get a better handle. Yesterday, the governor did his budget address. Today, we're looking at his budget book, which is about yay thick, trying to read the details, trying also to find details that are not necessarily in there. And that's not necessarily bad. It's just sometimes details are something you have to search out to make sure that your constituents and how they're going to be affected by it.
And I appreciate that overview of how the budget process works. Let me ask you a question. Nobody's denying that there's some fiscal issues here in Pennsylvania. How do you see the process? And give us a brief overview of what fiscal challenges you see and how you think we can overcome some of those.
Well, one of the problems that we have is we've been overspending. You know, I have always had the philosophy is you overestimate your expenditures and underestimate your revenues so that at the end of the year, hopefully it's all balanced out. You don't get surprised by your expenditures, and you don't get surprised also if you don't bring in the revenues that you were really hoping for. So my hope is that we will craft a budget that is exactly that we'll look truly at what the real expenditures are and what the real revenues are, rather than just inflating numbers and say, oh, well, we have a balanced budget. So we'll be taking a serious look at all the proposals the governor has, as well as members of the House and the Senate, to bring in additional revenues. But one of our biggest problems that we've had is we know, for instance, the sales tax is an area that's hurting because a lot more people are buying things on the internet. So thereby our sales tax collections are down tremendously because people now can buy things on the internet, which right now states are not allowed to tax. Also, difference is a changing of policy. Consumers are now buying gift cards for their children and relatives, which there's no sales tax on those. So those are affecting our sales tax collections as well as other things. This past month, we've seen a good uptick in the personal income tax, but the revenue part is the part that I think we have to focus on. What are the real money that we're bringing into Pennsylvania, and then tailor our spending to the revenue.
And then the governor presented the budget yesterday, and in last term was my first term, and you've been here much longer, of course, and what I noticed was the real difference. I had mentioned it in my opening statement, was that I feel like we're actually further along this year than much further along, and I'm optimistic by it. We're not there yet.
Right.
There's work to be done. We all know that there is, but the fact that we're at this point in the process in February versus this point in the process in June,
right.
it seems like that could have a major impact. Do you agree with that?
I agree. I think that as I talked to the governor on Monday night up at the governor's mansion, he's like, Stan, you're going to love parts of my budget. You're not going to like other parts of the budget, but we'll work together. And I think that's the key. I think, as we move forward, we're closer to an agreement now at the start than we've ever been in a budget process, because the governor has realized that the voters have spoken. They don't want higher sales tax and higher personal income taxes. They want us to live within our means, just like they do when they sit around their kitchen table maybe, and they're sitting there trying to figure out whether they can afford to buy the new refrigerator or washer dryer or even a new car. How can I afford to make those payments in my budget? That's what I think they expect you and I to do here in Harrisburg, is what are you and I as legislators required to pay for in Pennsylvania? What are the things that are in the budget that are nice to have, but we don't have to have right now? We are still not in a recovery. Pennsylvania still has the highest unemployment rate of any state surrounding us. So how do we have to get back into being competitive and creating jobs? And my focus as Appropriations Chairman is going to be, and I know you have a great interest in it, and that is creating jobs in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. And some of the things we've talked about is drilling down in these budget hearings and actually getting answers from the different secretaries, and if not, bringing the budget secretary in. It's a great philosophy to have that person lined up, ready to go, so we can get those answers. One thing that stuck out to me was the education piece of it, and I know that's big for you because you were the education chairman last term. And I saw that the governor's still making a commitment to public education. There's still a tax credit program for EITC, which is scholarships for non-public schools. One of the things that concerned me was I did see that there's $100 million of the tax credit program that is going to be in a block grant form. Is that EITC? Is it the film tax credit? We don't know those answers, and those are some of the answers I'm assuming we're going to drill down, and we will be able to get the answers to.
Absolutely. We have some great public schools in Pennsylvania, and we have some bad ones. But we also have Catholic and Christian schools and charter schools that do a great job, and we have some bad ones. Our key, has been in particularly in your area and my area of the state, we haven't gotten our fair share of funding in the education budget. We passed last session a new funding formula, which will hopefully help Delaware County and the surrounding southeast area, as well as York County and Lancaster counties, because in the past, we have been fast-growing areas and communities. Our demographics have changed tremendously in poverty and everything else. So we have changed the funding formula to take that into consideration. Some days, I got to be honest, I want to go and take the whole pot of money and say, Jamie, you and I take it to affect our schools. There's 203 members of the House and, of course, 50 senators who aren't going to quite totally agree with us. But I do think we're moving in the right direction in education. We're focusing on the things that need to be. So we're going to be helping public schools, and we're going to be helping those others who have parents have made choices to go elsewhere.
And I know with the new funding formula, which I know you were involved with, it's a great program. It's a good beginning step, especially for districts like ours. Yeah. We need to start looking at that shift in the future of when, instead of just new money, that existing money, but it's got to be done over time, because otherwise those districts that are in a position where they are receiving more funds from the Commonwealth will be in the same exact position our districts are in. So it's got to be we realize there's a time lapse there, and I'm not even going to ask you to comment on it because I don't think that's fair. It's what affects my district. But what are some other big policy issues or initiatives that we're going to be working on? Well,
we have the merger of the Department of Aging, Department of Health, and the Department of Drug and Alcohol into the Department of Health and Human Services. Those we need to delve into. The governor has found some savings by merging those. You and I are going to delve into the fact of, are there more savings, more duplication of services? The key anytime in government is the quality of service you deliver to the taxpayers who are paying for those services. And I mention all the time, because I have a real love and care about children with autism. We have to make sure, and I use that as an example, is children with autism, it's great to say, hey, we're going to do services for you, but is the services we provide quality services? Are the services we provide getting to all the children who have autism? And that's just one of many programs that are out there in the Department of Health and Human Services. So as you and I go through the hearings, we're going to be challenging the Secretary of that department on how the merger is going to benefit your taxpayers and mine, and what programs exactly duplication is going to end, and where we can find cost savings and better management of some of these programs.
Yeah, well, as you know, I'm on the Autism and Intellectual Disabilities Caucus, something that we actually had a meeting this morning and focus on some of those types of issues. The waiting list last year we made an investment in that waiting list and it didn't go through. Right. They use that money to carry other costs. I'm told that the money's there again. I think it's about $8.6 million. It moves about 820 to 1,000 kids off of that list. We got to make sure that happens. We got to really nail that down. And I know it's important to you as it is to me. We have the ability to nail that down through the fiscal code.
Absolutely. And we're going to. That's one of the things that I just couldn't believe when I found out that money that had been earmarked for children had been used to pay salaries, basically. And it's like, that was not the intent of the legislature. I think sometimes, and not being partisan, but Democratic and Republican governors don't respect the wishes of you and I. We pass legislation. We expect them to follow it. We trust them to follow it. What we've had to do in some cases, not give them the flexibility, because when you give people flexibility, they seem to abuse that flexibility. So this year, we're going to make sure we tie those dollars down and those dollars get to where the children are needed.
And that's one of the fortunate things about our job. I think we're one of the last offices in what I call ranking that we actually get out and see our constituents. They come to see us in our local district offices. We visit the different programs, and where governors and Congress and Senate, they don't have the ability that we have because we're in a more narrowed area, especially me down in the southeast where I have a much geographic smaller area. We have the same amount of residents we represent, but I can go visit those programs and see it and understand the impact that it has. And I think that helps, and that's why we are so compassionate about these issues. Representative Saylor, I really appreciate you taking some time and spending it here with me this morning and going through your insight on the budget. That is all the time we have for today's program. I'm Rep. Jamie Santora. If you have any questions about what we've discussed or need assistance on any state issue, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching.